Two gods loved each other so intensely that their embrace left no room for the world to exist. Their forced separation created the fundamental structure of reality itself, and their eternal longing for each other became the engine that drives the cosmos. The love story of Nut and Geb is one of ancient Egypt's most beautiful and tragic myths, a tale that explains not just the physical structure of the universe but also the emotional and spiritual dimensions of existence. Unlike many creation stories that focus on conflict or deliberate design, this myth centers on love, separation, and the bittersweet necessity of distance that allows life to flourish even as it causes eternal suffering to those who are separated. What makes this myth so powerful is its recognition that sometimes the greatest acts of love require sacrifice and separation. Nut and Geb's story teaches that cosmic order, Mat itself, sometimes demands that even the most profound connections be broken for the greater good. The space between earth and sky, the emptiness that seems like absence, is actually the necessary condition for all other existence, a void filled with meaning rather than emptiness. If you're moved by these ancient stories of love, sacrifice, and cosmic meaning, subscribe to Snappled Myths. We're creating a complete series exploring Egyptian mythology's deepest themes, and your support helps us continue bringing these profound tales to modern audiences. Hit that like button to help others discover these timeless stories. In the beginning, after Atum had created himself from the primordial waters and brought forth Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture, these twin deities gave birth to the next generation of gods. From their union came Geb, whose name means earth, and Nut, whose name represents the vast expanse of the heavens. From the moment of their creation, Geb and Nut were drawn to each other with a love so complete and total that nothing else in all of creation mattered to them. Ancient Egyptian texts describe how Geb and Nut came into being already intertwined, their bodies locked in an embrace so tight that no light could pass between them, no air could circulate, no space existed for anything else to be. Geb lay beneath, his body forming mountains and valleys, deserts and fertile plains. Nut arched above him, her body spanning the entire heavens, covered with stars that represented the gods and souls traveling through the night sky. But this perfect union created an impossible situation for the cosmos. With earth and sky pressed together in eternal embrace, there was no room for the world to exist. No plants could grow in the darkness between them. No creatures could live in the absence of space and light. No sun could travel from east to west to bring the cycle of day and night. The universe, barely born, was sterile and static, frozen in the perfection of divine love that paradoxically prevented any other life from manifesting. Atum, the creator god, observed this situation with concern. His creation was incomplete, trapped in potential rather than realized. He had brought forth gods who loved each other so perfectly that their love became a prison rather than a blessing. Something had to change, but how could he ask two beings to give up their greatest joy for the sake of a world that didn't yet exist? The dilemma was profound and painful, requiring wisdom that balanced compassion with cosmic necessity. Atum turned to Shu, the god of air and atmosphere, father of the embracing couple. The pyramid texts record Atum's command: Shu, place yourself beneath your daughter Nut, and hold her aloft. That space may exist between earth and sky. This was not simply a practical instruction but a terrible burden, asking a father to be the instrument of his children's separation, to create the distance that would cause them eternal pain even as it allowed the world to flourish. Shu understood the necessity but felt the weight of what he was being asked to do. To separate Geb and Nut meant condemning them to eternal longing, forcing them apart so that all other creation could exist in the space between them. It was a sacrifice of the most profound kind, the deliberate breaking of perfect love for the sake of imperfect life. Ancient texts describe Shu's hesitation, his awareness that what he was about to do would cause suffering that would last until the end of time itself. With determination born of cosmic duty rather than desire, Shu positioned himself between his daughter and son. He placed his hands upon Nut's body and began to push upward with all his divine strength. The separation was agonizing, not physically but spiritually and emotionally. As Geb and Nut were torn apart, their cries of anguish echoed across the newly forming cosmos. the first sounds of pain and loss that the universe had ever known. Shu pushed and pushed, lifting Nut higher and higher above Geb. Her body stretched and arched, reaching desperately back toward her beloved, even as she was forced further away. Geb reached upward with mountains and hills, trying to close the gap, but Shu's strength was absolute and his purpose was necessary. Finally, Nut was lifted so high that she spanned the entire vault of heaven, her body forming the dome of the sky, held aloft by Shu, who would stand between earth and heaven for all eternity, the eternal separator ensuring the distance remained. Temple reliefs from across Egypt depict this moment with heartbreaking clarity. They show Nut arching across the heavens, her body covered with stars, her fingertips and toes touching the distant horizons. Below her, Geb lies upon the earth, his body forming the landscape, his face turned upward, eternally gazing at his separated beloved. Between them stands Shu, arms raised, supporting the sky, the necessary barrier who makes all life possible through his intervention. The separation created the fundamental structure of the Egyptian cosmos, but it did not end Nut and Geb's love. Instead, it transformed their love into eternal longing, a desire that could never be fulfilled, a connection that could never be broken despite the distance between them. Every moment of every day, Geb gazes upward at Nut, and she looks down at him, both forever aware of the other's presence yet unable to touch, unable to embrace, unable to return to the perfect unity they once knew. This longing became the engine of cosmic motion. Ancient Egyptian texts suggest that Geb's yearning causes earthquakes as he trembles with desire. His tears become the waters that flow across the earth. His sighs become the winds that blow across the land. Every natural phenomenon on earth can be understood as Geb's expression of longing for his separated sky goddess. The earth literally moved by love that cannot be consummated. Nut's longing manifests differently but no less powerfully. The rain that falls from the sky represents her tears, moisture descending from heaven to touch the earth in the only contact she can manage. The stars that cover her body are said to be her children and the souls of the dead, kept close to her in the only realm she can control since she cannot be close to Geb. The daily movement of the sun across her body follows the path of her constant attention to the earth below. Yet from this tragedy came tremendous fertility and creativity. Before their separation, when Geb and Nut were locked together, they created nothing because they needed nothing beyond each other. But separation, painful as it was, generated a creative tension that manifested as continuous generation of life and meaning. The coffin texts speak of how Geb and Nut's longing for reunion became the fundamental energy that powers all cycles of death and rebirth. Their brief union before the separation had produced 5 children, born in days that Thoth won from the moon through clever gaming, days that existed outside the regular calendar because Ra had cursed Nut not to give birth on any day of any year. These children, Osiris, Isis, Set-Nephthys, and Horus the Elder, would become central figures in Egyptian mythology, carrying forward the creative power of their parents' love even though that love itself was forever constrained. The separation of Nut and Geb created the space for the daily cycle that structured all Egyptian life. Each morning Nut gives birth to the sun Ra, who travels across her body from east to west. The journey of the sun became understood as Ra sailing across Nut's star-covered form, bringing light and warmth to the earth below. Every sunset, Nut swallows the sun, and it travels through her body during the night, to be reborn at dawn in an endless cycle of death and rebirth. This daily cycle was deeply connected to Egyptian understanding of death and resurrection. Just as the sun entered Nut's body at night and emerged reborn in the morning, so too did Egyptian souls enter the sky goddess at death, traveling through her starry body to eventually be reborn. Nut became the ultimate mother, the one who receives all the dead and nurtures them toward rebirth, her separated body becoming the gateway to eternal life rather than a barrier to it. Nut's role as sky goddess made her one of Egypt's most important protective deities. Her body literally covered and protected all of Egypt, shielding the land from the chaos waters that existed beyond the cosmos. Temple texts call her she who holds 1,000 souls, referring to both the stars and the spirits of the dead who traveled across her body. Her protection was total and encompassing. the ultimate maternal figure whose separated state allowed her to embrace not one beloved but an entire world. Images of Nut appeared on the inside lids of coffins and sarcophagi throughout Egyptian history. The deceased would lie looking up at painted representations of the sky goddess arching protectively over them, her star-covered body promising that death was not an ending but a return to the Great Mother, an entrance into her protective embrace. The pyramid texts contain prayers addressing Nut directly, asking her to gather the deceased into her care and guide them through the night sky toward rebirth. Geb's role as earth god made him the foundation of all physical existence in Egypt. He was called the Great Cackler because his laughter was believed to cause earthquakes, though this laughter might better be understood as frustrated longing given form. All that grew from the earth, from grain to trees to the bodies of humans and animals, was understood as emerging from Geb's substance, making him the ultimate provider of physical sustenance just as Nut provided spiritual protection. Geb was particularly associated with fertility and abundance because the earth's productive capacity was seen as his attempt to reach upward toward Nut, to bridge the gap through the growth of plants and mountains. Every harvest was a gift from Geb, every fertile field a manifestation of his generative power. Yet this power was always understood as fundamentally connected to his separation from Nut, as if productivity itself was born from frustrated desire channeled into creative output. The relationship between Geb and Nut also carried political significance in ancient Egypt. The pharaoh was understood as the intermediary between earth and sky, between Geb and Nut, the one who maintained Mat by properly managing the space between them. Just as Shu held earth and sky apart, the pharaoh maintained the cosmic order that their separation had created, ensuring that the productive tension remained balanced and beneficial rather than destructive. The story of Nut and Geb resonates across cultures and time periods because it captures universal truths about love, sacrifice, and the bittersweet nature of existence itself. Perfect union, as beautiful as it might be, leaves no room for growth, change, or the flourishing of others. Separation, painful as it is, creates the space where life and meaning can emerge. The most profound love sometimes requires distance, not because the love is diminished but because its very intensity would otherwise overwhelm everything else. The myth also speaks to the reality that cosmic order, Mat, sometimes demands sacrifices that seem cruel from an individual perspective but are necessary from a universal one. Nut and Geb suffer eternally so that everything else can exist. Their pain is real and continuous, yet without it there would be no world, no life, no consciousness to appreciate beauty or meaning. The tragedy of their separation is simultaneously the blessing that allows all other stories to unfold. Egyptian philosophers and priests understood that the Nut and Geb story operated on multiple levels simultaneously. On the literal level, it explained the physical structure of the universe, why the sky was above and the earth below with space between. On the symbolic level, it represented the necessary tension between opposites that generates creative energy, the productive friction between male and female, static and dynamic, matter and spirit. On the mystical level, it taught that separation is an illusion, that Nut and Geb remained fundamentally united despite the apparent distance because love transcends physical separation. Some versions of the myth suggest that at the end of time, when the current cosmic cycle concludes and all souls have completed their journeys through death and rebirth, Nut and Geb will be allowed to reunite. In this final reunion, the world as we know it will cease to exist, collapsing back into the perfect unity from which it emerged, completing the great cycle of creation and dissolution. This eschatological hope meant that Nut and Geb's suffering was not pointless but purposeful, serving the cosmic order until that order's ultimate fulfillment. The story of Nut and Geb teaches us that the spaces between things, the distances and separations that seem like absences or losses, are actually filled with meaning and potential. The gap between earth and sky isn't empty but contains all the world we know, all the life we experience, all the beauty we perceive. Love that creates space for others to flourish, even at the cost of its own fulfillment, represents perhaps the highest form of love the universe has ever known. The sky goddess and earth god gave up their perfect embrace so that we could exist, and every moment of our existence is lived in the cathedral of space created by their eternal sacrifice and maintained by their undying longing for reunion. This video was created by combining human research and script writing with AI-assisted visual production, bringing these ancient stories to life for modern audiences. For more Egyptian mythology-related products and the tools we use to create this content, check the links in the description below.